In this video, I will be presenting my research on the Jewish deity known as Shekinah. I'll be explaining her pagan origins and how she manifests in Jewish mysticism, Christianity, and especially Freemasonry. This will be a long video, but I will try my very best to make it as brief as possible. If I can help it, I want to leave the viewers with a full understanding or education regarding this false goddess. I will try to accomplish this to the best of my ability. I am a Christian, though my approach may seem too objective for some. I simply like to pass along information and let the recipient decide what to do with it. I'm not really interested in trying to make up anyone's minds for them. That said, I don't endorse the views expressed in the books that I'll be reading. I am opposed to this false goddess and all of her other forms. I'll be reading from 4 books, as well as showing video clips with additional information. And after that, I'll take a few minutes to reveal where the false goddess Shekinah has been popping up in a few movies and even some music video clips. I'd like to thank you all in advance for watching the video. I hope you will find it to be informative and well worth your time. First, for my viewers who are unfamiliar with the God of the Mystery Schools, allow me to take a moment to explain what he is. The God of the Mystery Schools is not the God of the Old Testament. The God of the Mystery Schools is not much more than I will call him a power source. And he is a power source that caused everything in the universe to come into existence. Depending on who you ask, it's neither a he nor a she. Most will call it a he, and so will I, just because. So whenever this source, also called the divine mind, the all, the grand architect, the first light, Ein Sof, or even the Father, whenever he did something, that something became a being. And this emanation, this thing that emanated from him, is an attribute. So the emanations are also called aeons in Gnosticism, or occasionally, I guess, angels, depending on if the person really wants to sound Christian or not. So the Christian God, the true God, is called the Demiurge. In the mystery teaching, the Christian God is actually a lesser being who merely imagines that he's the one who created the world. He imagines that he's the one and only true God, and he is a tyrannical dictator who wants to enslave us. He is, quote, Satan in this from this point of view. So naturally, this means that the one us Christians would call Lucifer or Satan is the force for good. Often in direct opposition to this Demiurge is the goddess. What's so interesting is that the Demiurge was birthed by the goddess. She is his virgin mother because she had brought him forth without the aid of a male partner. And this Demiurge has the body of a serpent and the head of a lion. So he is a serpent-lion hybrid. And the interesting thing about that is that the lion, both the lion and the serpent, are symbols of the goddess, as you will see in this video. And what's also very interesting to me is that the Catholic Church teaches that Mary is the one who will crush the head of the serpent, not Jesus Christ. So if you're familiar with the fact that Mary is an avatar of Sophia, and that the serpent is a symbol of the goddess and also a symbol of Sophia, being a wisdom goddess, it makes you wonder, or at least it makes me wonder, if this is a veiled way of the Catholic Church saying that Sophia will defeat the Christian God. While some may find another figure in Gnosticism to attribute the name Lucifer to, from my study, no other being found in mystery doctrines or such as Gnosticism fits the profile so perfectly as the goddess Sophia. And Sophia may just be a variation of Shekinah, who has her origin in the Canaanite deity called Asherah.
At Tel Rehov, archaeologists are digging at an Israelite house that illuminates the religious practices of its ancient inhabitants.
Well, we just found this beautiful, exceptional clay figurine showing a goddess, a fertility goddess, that was worshipped here in Israel. Here, in this case, she's shown holding a baby.
Who is this fertility goddess? And what is a pagan idol doing in an Israelite home? Dramatic evidence as to her possible identity first surfaced in 1968. Bill Deaver was carrying out salvage excavations in tombs in southern Israel when a local brought him an inscription that had been robbed from one of them.
When I got home and brushed it off, I thought I was going to have a heart attack. Executed in clear 8th century script. It's the tomb inscription. And it just gives the name of the deceased, and it says, "Blessed may X be by Yahweh." That's good biblical Hebrew. But it says by Yahweh and his Asherah. And Asherah is the name of the old Canaanite mother goddess.
More inscriptions associating Yahweh and Asherah have been discovered, and thousands of figurines unearthed throughout Israel. Deaver concludes God had a wife.
Beginning our reading in Reinstating the Divine Woman in Judaism by Jenny Keen, or Jenny Kine, I'm not exactly sure how to pronounce that. The first millennium BCE brought further changes to Phoenician religion. Asherah disappeared to be replaced by Tanit, a name derived from one of her epithets meaning serpent lady. She also seems to have lost her role as queen of the whole heavens, being reduced to a lunar goddess. In Carthage, a transcendent Baal Shemim dominated the pantheon, and Tanit became Phanebal, the face of Baal. In other words, in this millennium, Asherah, the great goddess, had become the presence of Baal as much as the female Shekinah of the Kabbalah is said to represent the presence of Yahweh. The large and wonderful mother lioness that used to accompany Asherah has disappeared without a trace, completely replaced by a roaring lion. This is not a case of a female symbol being masculinized, since the male lion had long been used in the ancient Near East as a symbol of kingship. The lioness disappeared with the goddess, while the kingly male lion remained to denote authority in Judah and Israel. Under Persian influence, he became a roaring lion, and the roaring lion later spread throughout Europe as a symbol of royalty or strength. It is this lion which can be found in many coats of arms of estates, provinces, or states in which lions never roamed. Now, when we think of lions, it is only the male we see. King of beasts, we no longer remember the lioness, the lethal huntress and tender mother purring to her cubs. Asherah's other major animal attribute, the serpent, now symbolizes all evil. This represents a major shift, as the goddess would not have had an evil serpent as her attribute animal. The snake as lord of life, death, and immortality, and as the keeper of wisdom, was an appropriate adjunct to the great mother goddess. These creatresses and goddesses of life have always embodied both the giving and the taking of life. Finally, the snake must have been important in biblical times as a life and wisdom giving attribute of the goddess. Otherwise, it would have needed no cursing and the expulsion from the Garden of Eden in Genesis 3. The story of the Garden of Eden in Genesis was all that was left of the snake after the demise of the goddess in Judaism. A complex negative symbolism then developed around the serpent in Jewish midrashim and Christianity, finally changing it from a symbol of life's renewal into a symbol of evil. Even more important than the snake, Asherah's major symbol over many centuries was the sacred tree. Both extra-biblical and biblical evidence and biblical tradition associate Asherah with trees. Her image, the Asherah, was wooden and is sometimes referred to as being planted, i.e. a tree or something made up or made and set up, such as a carved trunk or pole. There are clear Deuteronomic instructions not to plant any trees or set up Asherah next to Yahweh's altars. Deuteronomy chapter 16 verse 21 through 22. Returning yet again to Asherah and her major symbol, the tree of life, we have seen in biblical texts how Asherah is usually to be found hidden behind a holy tree. With this in mind, it is striking that the tree of life has played a major role in Jewish mysticism over the last 2 millennia and is one of the major symbols in the Kabbalah. From womanthouartgod.com, Asherah is a very ancient goddess. In the ancient Ugaritic text, she is called she who gives birth to the gods, which is similar to what Roman Catholics say about the Virgin Mary in calling her the Mother of God. Asherah is also called she who treads on the sea. In fact, scholars have revealed that much of the Old Testament is about a religious war between the followers of the goddess Asherah and the followers of the god Yahweh. In the end, it was the followers of Yahweh who won, and it was they who wrote the Bible as we know today.
Sacred or temple prostitution is a sexual ritual consisting of intercourse or other erotic activity performed in the context of religious worship. Scholars have long considered such practices to be customary in the ancient world, but some prefer the term sacred sex to sacred prostitution in cases where a payment for service was not involved. Ancient Near Eastern societies along the Tigris and Euphrates rivers featured many shrines and temples or ziggurats dedicated to various deities. According to the 5th century BC historian Herodotus, the rites performed at these temples included sacred sex rites, and I quote, "The foulest Babylonian custom is that which compels every woman of the land to sit in the temple of Aphrodite and have intercourse with some stranger at least once in her life. Most sit down in the sacred plot of Aphrodite, by which the men pass and make their choice, and once a woman has taken her place there, she does not go away to her home before some stranger has cast money onto her lap and had intercourse with her outside the temple. But while he casts the money, he must say, 'I invite you in the name of Mylitta.' It does not matter what the sum of money is. The woman will never refuse, for that would be a sin. The money being by this act made sacred." So she follows the first man who casts it and rejects no one. After their intercourse, having discharged her sacred duty to the goddess, she goes away to her home, and thereafter there is no bribe however great, that will get her. So then the women that are fair are soon free to depart, but the uncomely have long to wait, because they cannot fulfill the law, for some of them remain for 3 years or 4. So in other words, in ancient Babylon, it was a sexual right expected of every woman, no matter how wealthy her family was, to prostitute herself at least once, and for the females that were not attractive, according to Herodotus, this could potentially take years to fulfill. According to the noted Assyriologist Samuel Noah Kramer, kings in the ancient Near Eastern region of Sumer established their legitimacy by taking part in ritual sexual acts in the temple of Ishtar every year on the 10th day of the New Year festival.
From Every Man's Talmud, the major teachings of Rabbinic sages by Abraham Cohen, with the object of utilizing the doctrine of immanence of God in the world, while avoiding the suggestion that he could be located in any spot, the rabbis invented a certain terms to express the divine presence without giving support to a belief in his corporeality. The most frequent of these terms is Shekinah or Shekinah, which literally means dwelling. It denotes the manifestations of God upon the stage of the world, although he abides in the faraway heaven. In the same way that the sun in the sky illumines with its rays every corner of the earth, so the Shekinah, the effulgence of God, may make its presence felt everywhere. Accordingly, the Shekinah is often depicted under the figure of light. The scriptural phrase, "the earth did shine with its glory," receives the comment, "This is the face of the Shekinah." In the priestly benediction, "The Lord make his face to shine upon thee," is interpreted, "May he give thee the light of the Shekinah." This divine presence brings God, as it were, into the most intimate contact with human beings, so that he even shares their sorrows. And you guys may hear me go back and forth between Shekinah and Shekinah. I hope it doesn't throw you off. Originally, the place of the Shekinah was in the lower regions. When Adam sinned, it ascended to the first heaven. When Cain sinned, it ascended to the second. And in the generation of Enoch, it ascended to the third. In the generation of the flood, to the fourth. In the generation of the Tower of Babel, to the fifth. The men of Sodom caused it to depart to the sixth. And the Egyptians in the time of Abraham to the seventh. In contradistinction, 7 righteous men arose and made it descend. Abraham brought it down to the sixth, Isaac to the fifth, Jacob to the fourth, Levi to the third, Kohath to the second, Amram to the first, and Moses caused it to come down from above to below on earth. This is a way of teaching that as the wicked drive the Shekinah away from the abode of man, so the righteous restore its blessing to the human race. Another rabbinic concept to indicate the nearness of God and his direct influence on man is that of the Holy Spirit. Sometimes it seems to be identical with the Shekinah as expressing the divine immanence and the world as affected by what transpires there. Sufficient has been quoted to demonstrate how untenable is the view that the Talmudic conception of God is wholly transcendental. However reluctant the teachers of Israel were to identify God with his universe and insisted on his being exalted high above the abode of man, yet they thought of the world as permeated through and through with the omnipresent Shekinah. God is at once above the universe, in the very soul of the universe. Now we all know that God is not the soul of the universe. That is a reference to the anima mundi, or the or Sophia, the Mother Earth, or the Mother Goddess, who is matter itself. That's why this is called the material world, the mater, mother world. Rabbi Simlai said, "In every place where you find a text used by meaning or Christians in support of their opinions, you will find the refutation by its side. The meaning asks him, 'What of that which is written?' "Let us make man in our image, after our likeness." He answered, "Read what follows. It is not said, 'In God's created man in their image,' but 'In God created man in his own image.'" When they had departed, his disciples said to him, "You have thrust them aside with a reed. What answer will you give us?" He said to them, "In the past Adam was created from the dust of the ground, and Eve was created from Adam. Henceforth it is to be in our image, after our likeness, meaning a man will not be able to come into existence without a woman, nor a woman without man, nor both without the Shekinah."
Now, what Rand Paul should have known is that the Wailing Wall is the seat of a satanic ritual outlined by the 13th century Jewish occult system known as the Kabbalah, as expounded in the Zohar and expanded upon by the 18th century Hasidic movement. You see, this so-called divine presence at the Wailing Wall is actually the Kabbalistic feminine emanation of their false god, the Shekinah. Watch closely how the rabbis thrust their pelvises and penises back and forth in a prescribed prayer movement called davening, in which the Jew copulates with the Shekinah in order to give birth to an erotic union with the Ein Sof, the Kabbalistic masculine emanation of their false god. Now watch this young Jewish boy who, instinctively knowing that davening is a lewd and embarrassing act, just can't bring himself to perform the thrusting of his pelvis. My friends, for Rand Paul and for so many other saps like McCain, Bush, Obama, Clinton, and Romney, to perform the rite of political passage at the Wailing Wall is nothing less than to shake hands with the devil. And if God doesn't dwell in temples made by human hands, as the Bible tells us, much less would he dwell in a Roman fortress. The hoax is on. Not only are our politicians selling their souls to the Jews at a Roman fortress named Fort Antonia, misnamed the Western Wall, they're participating in a lewd occult ritual where the so-called divine presence is actually Satan himself. Satan's seat is at the Wailing Wall, and our politicians, brought there by the Jews, are carrying him all the way back home to America.
From the Cosmic Shekinah by Sarita Deste and David Rankine. The Shekinah is the primordial light of creation, the heavenly glory of divine wisdom, and the inspiration for prophecy. She is also the world soul, manifest from the divine sparks of her light, which comprise human souls and thus unites us all. With roots in the wisdom goddess of the ancient world, the Shekinah is the manifestation of feminine divinity from the unnamed wisdom goddess of the Old Testament found in the Jewish mystical systems known as the Kabbalah and Merkava mysticism. The name Shekinah first appeared in material found in the Onkelos Targum, which dates from the 1st-2nd century CE. This text by an unknown author was misnamed during the medieval period after Onkelos the proselyte from 35 through 110 CE, who translated the Bible into Aramaic. Prior to the medieval period, the earthly Shekinah was viewed more as the perfection man lost and strived to regain. She was seen both as the glory of God shining in heaven and on earth shining forth from the Ark of the Covenant, and as a symbol of the lost Garden of Eden. Keep in mind, if you can, that the Shekinah represents the perfection that man lost, or the lost paradise. The relationship between the Shekinah and the serpent is significant, particularly in light of the ambivalent nature of the symbolism associated with serpents in different cultures. Considering other wisdom goddesses, the serpent motif recurs with a number of them. For instance, the Canaanite wisdom and mother goddess Asherah was known as the Lady of the Serpent, Dat Batni. The serpent motif is of course a common one in many cultures, and it is the serpent that tempts Eve to gain wisdom in the book of Genesis, a course of action sometimes equated with the initiation into wisdom. Images of the Egyptian goddess Khushu, who was associated with Asherah, frequently show her holding serpents. There are 16 or so Egyptian plaques from the New Kingdom, 11th century BCE, showing Khushu, also called Kadesh, standing on a lion, holding lotuses in her right hand and a serpent in her left hand. The whole tree of life was described as being a symbol of the Shekinah in medieval Kabbalistic writings. From the common symbolism of the Asherah pole seen in the ancient Canaanite and Hebrew world, and such declarations as, they set up for themselves pillars and sacred poles, Asherim, on every high hill, under every green tree. There they made offerings on all the high places. 2 Kings chapter 17 verse 10 through 11. It is clear that the carved figure of a symbolic tree of life, and then subsequently the glyph of the Kabbalistic tree of life, have always been associated with the goddess of wisdom. Through considering the religions which influenced and were influenced by the development of Judaism in the Kabbalah, we find not only the origins of the Shekinah, but also her subsequent manifestations. Millennia before the rise of the Shekinah, we see the earliest association between wisdom and feminine divinity in the form of Inanna, the Sumerian goddess of love and war. In the myths of Sumer, it was Inanna who was said to have given civilization to humankind. What is significant is that Inanna is the first deity who bestows wisdom on humanity in the form of the May. So Inanna is the first goddess of wisdom, and she was known as the Queen of Heaven. The goddesses Inanna, Ishtar, Astarte, and Khushu, who are often conflated as manifestations of the same goddess, bear most of the same qualities. They were all linked to the planet Venus, also called Lucifer, as the evening morning star. They were sexually powerful goddesses of fertility, love, and war, and they were all depicted standing on the backs of lions and were shown naked. So one might say that the goddesses associated with Venus or Lucifer have always been riding the beast.
Kabbalah emphasizes very much the sacred feminine. In traditional Judaism, God is a man. He's always the he, which obviously puts a certain slant at the religion, which doesn't necessarily... it's not necessarily something that women find understandable, how God is always portrayed as a man. And in Kabbalah, he's not. I mean, God is not portrayed as a man. It's seen, the divine being is seen as having a synergy of male and female components. So there is the element of he, but there's also the element of she. And very often it's the female component which is seen as the most important. The dwelling of God on earth is called the Shekinah in Rabbinic Hebrew, and in Kabbalistic wisdom this is seen as the purpose of all our ritual observance and all our activities, to imbue the Shekinah with energy. Our focus is on the feminine manifestation of the divine. Of the 10 Sephirot, the 10 fundamental building energies of the universe, the last of all of them is Malchut, which is a feminine energy, which might sound deprecating to women at first glance because it's the last that's the lowest, but that's not the case, because implementation in Judaism is not a religion where we just hang on a mountain and meditate. Implementation is considered to be the greatest virtue, especially when it comes to spirituality, because spirituality is so hard to implement, and women are seen as particularly talented in that area. And there's also a messianic idea. It says that when we reach the New Age, the final era, this lowest Sephirah Malchut will invert and become the highest, and therefore the feminine energy will reign supreme. And Kabbalists The Rebbe spoke about this, how the contemporary feminist movement is a pre-taste of this, of returning women to a position of reversing that hierarchy and destroying it, putting women of a central role in society and in spirituality.
A significant motif connection between Inanna, Asherah, the wisdom goddess, and the Shekinah is that Inanna was linked to the tree of life, as the Halupu tree in her garden in the tale of the Halupu tree. From the emblems in the story, it can be seen as a prototype of the subsequent world tree stories. In the story, Inanna plants the Halupu tree or the willow tree in her garden, but a serpent nests in its roots. An Ansu bird, which is a lion-headed eagle, nests in the branches, and the goddess Lilith nests in the trunk. The serpent or dragon in the roots and the bird in the branches are motifs subsequently found in many world tree tales. The Kabbalah is essentially a philosophy in cosmology which explains human life and the universe through the orderings of chaos expressed as manifestations of the creative divine impulse at different levels. The process of manifestation subsequently produces matter in the creation of life. The central glyph of the Kabbalah is the tree of life. Not only is Shekinah specifically represented by 2 of the 10 Sephiroth and connected with the process of creation through the 4 worlds which comprise the Kabbalistic tree of life, but she is also viewed as being the Neshama or higher soul, which is a significant part of Kabbalistic philosophy. Additionally, the Shekinah is the feminine divine who is in dynamic polarity with the masculine divine, resulting in creation and change. As such, she is both the greater Shekinah who unites with God and the lesser or exiled Shekinah who is the soul of the earth itself, or Mother Nature. This relationship between the Shekinah and the earth as the anima mundi, or world soul, has found a modern scientific outlet in the Gaia hypothesis of the scientist James Lovelock, which argues that the earth is a single self-regulated system which responds to changing circumstances.
We're not Newton's machines. We're part of an incredible series of living systems that spans the Earth. I visited James Lovelock in the west of England. He's a chemist whose work has been a revelation to me. Almost 40 years ago, he perceived the largest living system of them all, the one that's kept the planet fit for life since life began.
To begin the story, I was a science fiction addict. I had been since a kid. I really loved it. And when they started exploring space, it seemed to me, almost a dream come true. And I'll never forget the day I had a letter from the Director of Spaceflight Operations of NASA inviting me to join in with their first moon landing expeditions, to be one of the scientists responsible for analysing the surface. To me it was just like a love letter. It was one of those really exciting events of a lifetime.
While he was with NASA, he joined a group of scientists searching for signs of life in the solar system. He wondered how we could detect life on another planet without going there. He focused on the planetary atmospheres. What he found changed the way we see our world.
When you look at the atmospheres of our 3 planets, Earth, Mars and Venus, they are enormously different. Mars and Venus, which are dead, both have atmospheres which are dominated by the gas carbon dioxide, which is what you'd expect from the distribution of elements. But When you look at the Earth, it's a totally different matter. We have methane, a hydrocarbon, and oxygen, and they're reacting all the time, burning like a cold flame in our atmosphere. If you were a Martian astronomer, so to speak, looking at the Earth to detect signs of life by atmospheric analysis, it would shout back at you, we're a living planet, and there's no question about it. All sorts of things would come back immediately from the atmospheric composition. And it began to come into my mind at that moment, and I remember it very vividly. Well, if our atmosphere is so extraordinarily different, so reactive, and yet it stays constant for millions of years, something must be regulating it. And since I knew that these gases all came from living organisms, it must be life that's doing the regulating. So now I had my idea of a system on the Earth that could regulate the climate and the chemistry.
That all came together in that just... Wow, what an exciting moment.
It was an exciting moment.
James Lovelock saw the planet as a living entity. He saw how the totality of life on Earth creates and maintains the conditions for life, cycling the crucial elements: earth, air, fire, and water. It was a new vision for science, but one with deep roots in human tradition. He named this planetary entity Gaia, after the Greek goddess who first drew the world from chaos, breathing life and form into matter.
Originally, there was no clear distinction between the heavenly Shekinah and the earthly Shekinah until Adam and Eve left Eden. Here then we may see the heavenly Shekinah as representing the purity and innocence of Eden, the idealized golden age. The heavenly Shekinah was seen as the divine bride united with the masculine God in an equal relationship. This pattern was also repeated with the earthly Shekinah being the bride of the sun or sun. And parallel with the Shekinah in her earlier manifestations, there was another goddess being worshipped in another part of the world who manifested through many forms, the Indian Shakti or Sakti. Shakti means power or energy, and she is viewed as the cosmic power or energy which creates change. Significantly, Shakti is treated both as a goddess and a philosophical category, paralleling the way the Shekinah is often perceived. However, unlike the Shekinah, Shakti is perceived as being the essence of every goddess. Like the Shekinah, she has the cosmic or heavenly manifestation, and also an earthly manifestation with everyone, as the Kundalini or serpent fire power. So now we have a tie here. We can see that the so-called Shekinah is the equivalent to the Kundalini. Light is a key concept in Kabbalah, and as the Shekinah is the primordial light which created the universe, descriptions of light are often associated with her. The Gnostic Sophia was also associated with light. Thus we see her described as the daughter of light. The Gnostic Barbelo, another form of Sophia as a wisdom goddess, is described in the Apocryphon of John as, she is the forethought of the all. Her light shines as his light. The inner light is the light of the divine, the cosmic Shekinah permeating all life. That inner light is a reference to the divine spark, or the light of the divine, the same light that permeates all matter according to them, and in the Gnosticism, it is the light or the power that came from Sophia, and it is that that divine, that so-called God within.
The Kabbalah describes that the one self, God, has two aspects, the masculine and the feminine. And that the feminine aspect of God is what the Kabbalah most addresses, right? Which is referred to as the Shekinah, the divine presence. And it's the feminine side of God, which is the side of God that's described as receptive. And women actually are masters at receiving. Right? First of all, physiologically, they are built as receivers. Right? They are receiving the seed, and then they know how to hold on to that seed and turn that seed into a human being. You know, men, we have a tendency to be in a rush. Okay, we don't know how to be really acceptive and bring into ourselves and allow for what it is that we've received to evolve into its totalness. We tend to be impatient. Okay, so feminine energy is that energy of being receptive, receiving.
From Freemasonry, Rituals, Symbols, and History of the Secret Society by Mark Stavish. The beauty, charm, and inspiration of what our forebears built in the name of Our Lady can be seen in every European city and town. The last vestiges of Celtic, Roman, and Egyptian and Germanic paganism were enshrined in the Catholic cathedrals, the Prince's Seat, and the marble and wood statues of Mary, the Mother of Jesus, the Child of the Sun, sending their silent message to the future generations. Building is what Masonry is all about. Building a better person, a better community, a better society, and a better world, all in that order. We know what a community values based on what it builds and what it allows to languish or decay. And I need to make you aware that this is a Freemason. This book is written by a Freemason, a 32-degree Freemason. In the High Middle Ages, during the Gothic period, temples of stone and light were created to give praise to the Mother of God. These were once central structures of a town or city dominating the landscape, and often were the tallest building, visible for miles away. The Temple of Solomon was unique in that within it the presence of God was said to dwell and be directly experienced by those present. The divine presence, known as Shekinah, is described as being a great billowing cloud and as physically palatable and tangible. Shekinah has distinctly feminine attributes, and her presence is described in sexual imagery. While it is suggested that this may be a reflection of the survival of earlier polytheistic traits within primitive Judaism, it is important to note that it is also suggested that Solomon may have secretly been involved in a cult of Astarte, and that during the Roman period, a temple to Venus was established on the Temple Mount. The Temple of Solomon, and even Solomon himself, is linked to the worship, expression, and concrete union with the creative power of the cosmos in distinctly feminine and sexual terms. While this is lost to most Jews and Christians, it may find its parallel survival in descriptions of the genius of Freemasonry, which is clearly feminine. This notion of a feminine presence of deity in and throughout the immediate material world was of great importance to the Renaissance adepts. The anima mundi, or soul of the world, is described as being female, and alchemy and geometry are both personified as being female. We even see the great revelation of the period, such as the chemical wedding of Christian Rosencreutz being preceded by the visitation of a feminine angel. Additional important concepts such as wisdom, the Word, and the Holy Spirit are also feminine in nature and are cornerstones of Masonic symbolism. Solomon is said to have worshipped at the altar of Astarte. However, this is possibly a confusion with the goddess Asherah, who was well known to the Jews and would have been introduced into Jerusalem as a result of Solomon's marriage to a Sidonian princess. Asherah would have been well known to the Sidonian and Tyrian workmen Solomon was importing to construct his temple to Yahweh. Note: Asherah was a fertility goddess and called the mother of the gods, or mother of the false gods. She was a mother of harlots and a mother of abominations. While it is difficult to give a stereotypical profile of what the average Renaissance magician was like, they did hold many character traits in common. All were independent thinkers who looked both within and to the world for experience and knowledge. They sought to understand nature and didn't separate divinity from creation or its inhabitants, as did their medieval predecessors and their contemporary theologians. God was everywhere and in everything, and as such, divine power was literally in the hands and hearts of the magus who chose to use it. The sacred word or sacred name, the first vibration of creation, was his tool to use, and in doing so, the magus identified himself with God. It is intriguing but also understandable to note that the majority of the great writers and practitioners of magic and alchemy in this period were either church-trained or active churchmen. In fact, until the end of the 14th century, almost anything was acceptable in Christian circles as long as the Holy Trinity was invoked and one considered himself a Christian. The taking or even the requesting of sacraments was in itself not enough to make good Christians either, for many sought not to remove Christ, but to reinvigorate the church with pre-Christian classical wisdom and learning. The appreciation of nature and observations of her truth is what drove them. The teachings of the church, the sacraments, and the rituals, these were merely the outer cloak that gave meaning and form to the Magi's inner truths. God spoke to them through nature, but the church gave the language of the day to express it. We often hear of the genius of Freemasonry referred to as she, and discussed in anthropomorphic terms, expressing human qualities, but on a perfected or archetypal level. Consider the image of a woman sitting alone in a cell designed for contemplation, wherein the mysteries are revealed, which is presented in the closing charge recited at the end of every lodge meeting. This symbol then takes on a deeper connection to both a literal spiritual force protecting Freemasonry and the Gnostic notions of the divine Sophia, or wisdom, the bride of God. So they're saying that this is an actual literal spiritual force. So often it is asked, what does the G mean in the square and compass? G stands for geometry, the most critical field of learning for any educated person, particularly one who would be in the building trades. Geometry means the measure of the earth. Through geometry, order, harmony, and synthesis are achieved, not in the abstract, but in the concrete and material world. Geometry, or the queen of science as it is known, is the practical application of mathematics to the material world, as it allows for the precise measurement of objects both far and near. It is interesting to note that when the building phase occurred, many, if not all, the great cathedrals, and to a fair extent the smaller ones as well, were dedicated to Our Lady, or the Virgin Mary, the Mother of Jesus Christ. Herein we see the material world giving birth or expression to divine ideals, taking them from the abstract and making them tangible, concrete, living. It was pointed out in the previous chapter that this reverence for things feminine continues in Masonry, in which the opening charge, which is said at the beginning of each meeting, refers to the genius of Freemasonry. Wisdom seeks the secret shade in the lonely cell designed for contemplation. There she sits, delivering her sacred oracles. This genius is the guiding spirit of Freemasonry in every Mason who seeks to understand its mysteries. In an earlier age, one in which Masonry arose, this would be thought of as a real spiritual power and intelligence, not unlike a guardian angel, whose existence and influence was very real and not simply poetic license. Later esoteric groups would think of it in terms of an egregore of Freemasonry, or a collective consciousness that both gives to and receives from the actions of its members. Like geometry and wisdom and the form of Sophia before it, the tendency to turn abstract forces and ideals into anthropomorphic images, particularly of a feminine form, suggests pre-Christian sources and classical paganism. One woodcut shows geometry personified as a beautiful woman, complete with the letter G and surrounded by the working tools of the building trade. For us, the key part to consider in relation to sacred geometry is the first. That which is above is as that which is below, and that which is below is as that which is above. This illustrates the connected nature of the so-called material and spiritual dimensions. This interrelationship of worlds is also the cornerstone of natural magic, in which these relationships can be manipulated, be it in the building of a temple, the creation of the talisman, or the design of a garden, city, or political state. Most of the great cathedrals were dedicated to Notre Dame, or Our Lady, Mary the Mother of Jesus. The Black Madonna seen in several of these cathedrals has esoteric significance that is often overlooked but is well known in alchemy. It also links these structures to the Temple of Solomon, the presence of the Shekinah, and Solomon's purported worship of Astarte, Venus. In the beginning was the Word, and it is through Mary that the Word is made flesh, and through geometry that ideal becomes form. The lost word that each master mason seeks, for he only receives a substitute word during his raising, is the power of creation itself. Mary is the wisdom seat, the foundation of all creation in the medieval mind, and the Word is her offspring. The power of creation is found in wisdom. In other words, the path to divinity goes through the goddess. And I personally believe that upon her forehead is a name written: Mystery Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and abominations of the earth. Now I will show you some things that can be found in media. One of the first things that I have for you here is the video made by Bjork. I believe that's how you pronounce her name. And in this video you see she has bright red hair, and this song that she sings is about the moon. I won't play the song just in case there is any copyright issues, but well, first of all, let's talk about the red hair. Okay, she has red hair. She's a scarlet woman. And also, red hair was something that Venus or Aphrodite had in her artwork. I don't know whether it was possibly something due to something that existed in real life or not, but in the artwork, she is depicted with red hair a lot. So she is a scarlet woman. And when we think about the scarlet woman, we think about Babylon. And so, of course, red hair is very common with characters also named Lucy. So one of the things that Björk does in this video is, while she plays music, she forms what some people will call the devil horns with her hands, but really that is called the moon hand sign. It represents the crescent moon, and even if you were to say it was a bull sign, a bull horns, still the horns represent the goddess as well, because the horns were representative of the crescent moon, and also because the bull, a bull is one of those symbols of the goddess once again. Taurus is a zodiac sign ruled by Venus, so it is a feminine sign that might shock people, but it's true. I'm including a clip of Sailor Venus from Sailor Moon also performing the moon hand signs, and Sailor Moon does it quite a bit too, as I covered in my video about Baphomet. Baphomet is a code, a cipher word for Sophia. It was used by the Knights Templar as a cipher. In this Björk video called The Gate, you can see a number of signs here. Some very feminine looking orifices, I guess you can call them that. These shapes, the way these shapes are, look like the female genitals, and then there is this floating, this eye-like creature floating and looking at Björk as she plays her flute. And I believe this is supposed to be a world that Björk, whoever she is, this goddess, created on her own. Now there's also some Saturn symbolism back there, where you see this little floating orb with rings around it. And of course, I think what Björk is playing here is a goddess, and I happen to suspect that this goddess is actually Shakti. Now that mask on her face reminds me of an owl, and it could be something a little more, let's just say, gross than that. I don't know if you can see it. I won't name it, but just on first glance, it looks like an owl. So this would be another sign of Shekinah, because her and Shakti are essentially the same sort of goddess. So in the music video for the movie Home, Jennifer Lopez plays this goddess, essentially. The song is called Feel the Light, and when you look at her, she can be, which goddess she is being is really just kind of up in the air. She's just this sort of ambiguous goddess character, but fitting her theme of light and this sort of connection with the earth, as you see her looking down on the earth, given what we've just read about Shekinah, I believe that we could interpret this goddess that she is being as a form of Shekinah. I reached back quite a ways to get this video for Britney Spears, simply because of her being the Scarlet Woman riding on a star, and I mean, that had to be included. Now in the movie The Fifth Element, there is a ton of Jewish mysticism. This movie is almost a trip through the Kabbalah tree of life. And interestingly, in the first couple of minutes, the first shots, we see a star fall from the sky. Now I'm not sure why they would show that unless that would be what I believe, at least, Lucifer falling. And there is an obvious reference to Lucifer in this movie at the end. At the beginning of this movie, they make numerous references to light, and the boys, one of the boys' names is Aziz, which means powerful or strong, and the man, when he calls him out, he's essentially saying strong or powerful light. So in this movie, it is revealed that the fifth element is a being, a person.
Found a fifth one. A fifth element. This man, this perfect being. I know this is the key, I know it.
When you think about the elements, you think about earth, wind, fire, water, the four elements, and witchcraft, and also the four elements that make up the realm or the world of Malkuth, which is the bottom Sephiroth on the tree of life. That's supposed to be earth. And so there's a fifth element, and that fifth element is embodied in a person, and that person is Shekinah. When we meet the fifth element in this movie, we find she has red hair, bright red hair, and that is our first indication as a viewer of who she is. And secondly, she adopts the name later in the movie of Lilu, and Lilu, of course, calls to mind Lily or even Lilith. So people in the movie can't help but remark about how perfect Lilu is. And that reminds us of what we learned about Shekinah being the symbol of paradise lost, or man's perfection lost, and that perfection that he must regain.
General alert.
Nobody knows who she is. No file, no ID, nothing. She's got a tattoo on this arm here.
Tattoo?
Fifth element. Hey, wake up. Who are you? Brought the girl, remember? The redhead. She just dropped in on me. Started speaking this bizarre language.
It's not bizarre. It's the divine language, the ancient language.
Okay.
Spoken throughout the universe before time was time. He's a she.
You noticed that, huh?
Yes. It's a miracle.
Miracle she's not dead.
We've not a moment to lose. Wake her up. But gently, because this woman is mankind's most precious possession. She is perfect.
So this red-headed Venus or Shekinah woman here, called Lilu, is as the fifth element, she represents the spirit, right? So there are the four elements: earth, wind, fire, water. And then the fifth one, of course, they say is aether or spirit. And spirit calls to mind the spirit of the earth, the anima mundi. That's what Lilu is in this movie. So as promised, there is a reference to Lucifer at the end of this movie. When the four elements and Lilu are brought together, I should just call her Shekinah, red-headed Shekinah, that's what I call her. So when the four elements and the red-headed Shekinah are brought together, there's one stone that they can't get to light. They need fire in order to light that stone. So what Corbin does is he lights a match, and that match is called, well, any match is called a Lucifer. And so there's our obvious reference to Lucifer. Now, if you understand that Shekinah is Venus and Venus is Lucifer, then you already knew who Lucifer was in this movie. But that's all I have to present to you. Thank you for watching. I really appreciate it. Sorry that it went on so long. I hope you were edified, and I hope you got a lot out of it. And with that, I'll bring this to a close. Thank you for watching.
What can wash away my sin? Nothing but the blood of Jesus. What can make me whole again? Nothing but the blood of Jesus. Oh, precious is the flow that makes me white as snow. No other fount I know, nothing but the blood of Jesus. For my pardon, this I see, nothing but the blood of Jesus. For my cleansing, this my plea, nothing but the blood of Jesus. Oh, precious is the flow that makes me white as snow. No other fount I know, nothing but the blood of Jesus. This is all my hope and peace, nothing but the blood of Jesus. This is all my righteousness, nothing but the blood of Jesus. Oh, precious is the flow that makes me white as snow. No other fount I know, nothing but the blood of Jesus. fount of every blessing, tune my heart to sing thy grace. Streams of mercy never ceasing, call for songs of loudest praise. Teach me some melodious sonnet, sung by flaming tongues above. Praise the mount I'm fixed upon it, mount of thy redeeming love. Daily I'm constrained to be. Let thy goodness like a fetter bind my wandering heart to thee. Jesus sought me when a stranger, wandering from the fold of God. He to rescue me from danger interposed his precious of mercy, never ceasing, call for songs of loudest praise.